Have you ever taken a quiet moment for yourself, perhaps while sitting on your favorite chair or looking out a window, to wonder what truly happens when a mean bully finally bumps into someone they simply cannot break? It is a very interesting thing to think about, because it shows us a lot about how the world works. Picture yourself for a second in a very peaceful place. You are standing right there on your very own front porch on a beautiful sunny Saturday morning, the kind of morning where the air feels crisp and clean, and the sun feels like a warm, soft hug resting on your shoulders. You are holding a cozy cup of warm coffee, feeling the heat of the ceramic mug in your palms and watching the steam rise up against your face in little dancing clouds. You are just taking a deep, happy breath of the fresh air in your brand new neighborhood, feeling like you have finally found a place to belong. Everything feels perfect and quiet. But then, that lovely peace is suddenly shattered into a million pieces. A police car comes racing around the corner, its tires making a loud noise on the pavement, and it screeches to a very sudden stop right in front of your house. An officer jumps out of the car, his boots hitting the ground hard, and he starts shouting at you for no reason at all. He does not ask for your name in a polite way, and he does not even check to see if you are okay or if you need any help with something. He just wants to show you that he is the big boss, and you are nobody. This is exactly what happened to a kind man named Curtis on a day that should have been simple and happy. But that morning, the officer made a very big mistake that would change his life. He did not realize that he was picking a fight with a person who was much more powerful and much more important than himself in the eyes of the law. In this story, we are going to look at something very special called a power inversion. That is a fancy way of saying it is a moment when a person with just a tiny bit of power tries to bully someone who actually holds all of the cards in their hands. Before we get into the heat of this big battle, let us take a moment to look at who these two people really are, so we can understand their hearts. Curtis was a very tall and very calm man who had just moved his family into a beautiful new home in a very nice area. He had spent 15 long years working for the FBI, which is a group of very important investigators who catch the most dangerous criminals in the entire country. He was a real hero who had protected many people from harm, but on that specific morning, he was just a regular dad relaxing. He was wearing his old comfortable sweatpants and a plain white t-shirt, looking like anyone else would on a day off. On the other side of the yard stood Officer Harlon. Harlon was a veteran policeman who had been on the force for a long time, but he was not a good or kind man in his heart. He had a very long history of being mean to the citizens he was supposed to help and protect. He used his shiny badge like a weapon to make himself feel big and scary to others. When he looked at Curtis, he did not see a new neighbor or a brave federal agent who had saved lives. He only saw someone he thought he could push around because of the casual clothes Curtis was wearing and how he looked in that moment. This big argument changed everything for the local police department in that town forever. It shows us a very important lesson about why we should never judge a book by its cover or a person by the clothes they choose to wear. If you stay with me until the very end of this story, I am going to share a very special secret with you that many people do not know. I will tell you the one exact legal phrase that Curtis used which officially ended the officer's career right then and there. You will not want to miss the exact moment the bully realizes his whole life is about to change forever because of his own bad choices. Now let us look at the moment the peace of the neighborhood called Oakidge Estates was completely broken. Officer Harlon did not walk up the path to be friendly or to say a simple hello to a new face. Here is your continuation, formatted cleanly without changing a single word. He marched toward the house like he was going to war, his face set in a mean frown. He walked right past the driveway and stopped at the very bottom of the porch steps, looking up at Curtis. He rested his hand right on his gun, letting it sit there for Curtis to see. This was a little trick he used many times before to scare people and show them who was in charge of the situation. Curtis saw this right away because he was a professional. He had trained many young officers for years on how to stay calm and how to keep things peaceful and quiet in the community. Harlon was doing the exact opposite of everything a good officer should do. He was acting just like a bully who happened to have a badge pinned to his chest. He looked at Curtis in his old clothes and decided right then, without any proof, that he did not belong in this wealthy neighborhood. He shouted for Curtis to step down off the porch right now in a voice that was full of anger. He did not say hello or ask any polite questions like a neighborly person would. He just gave a mean order. Curtis did not move an inch. He stood very tall and looked the officer right in the eyes without any fear or shaking. Curtis asked what was wrong using a very calm and steady voice, which is the sign of a person who knows their own strength. This made Harlan even angrier than before because he wanted Curtis to be afraid. His face turned a bright shade of red like a tomato. He was not used to regular people saying no to him or asking questions. He told Curtis that a neighbor had called about a suspicious person in the area. He claimed that Curtis was prowling around the house like a thief looking for something to steal. Curtis laughed a little bit, not to be mean, but because it was so silly. He was just a man drinking his morning coffee on his own property. Harlan then stepped up onto the porch, invading Curtis's personal space. He was now just a few inches away from Curtis's face. He demanded to see an identification card immediately. He threatened to put Curtis in heavy metal handcuffs for trespassing on what Harlan thought was someone else's land. But Curtis knew the law better than almost anyone else in that town. He knew the officer had no right to search him or arrest him just for standing on his own wood porch. Curtis told him very clearly and firmly that he did not have to show his ID. He explained that the officer was actually the one breaking the rules by trespassing on private property without a good reason or a warrant. Harlan's eyes got very narrow and mean. He was about to make the biggest mistake of his entire life, and his pride would not let him stop. Harlan's ego was now completely out of control. He could not believe that a man in old sweatpants was talking back to him using smart legal words. Instead of stopping to think for a second about what he was doing, he decided to double down on his bad behavior. He reached for his metal handcuffs and made a very loud snapping sound with them to try and scare Curtis into giving up. He gave Curtis one last warning to show his ID or go face down on the hardwood floor of the porch. Behind the mean officer, a young rookie policeman named Bryce Langford looked very worried and uncomfortable. The young man knew this was going very wrong, but he was too afraid of his older partner to speak up and stop him. Curtis had his wallet right in his back pocket the whole time. Inside that wallet was a shining gold FBI badge that could end this whole fight in 1 second. But he did not reach for it just yet. Curtis decided to let Harlan finish what he had started. He knew that if he showed his badge now, Harlan would just act scared, say he was sorry, and walk away to find someone else to bother. He would never learn a real lesson about respect. He would just go out tomorrow and bully someone else who did not have a special badge to protect them. Curtis wanted Harlan's mean actions to be caught on the police camera and put on the official record where everyone in the town could see what kind of man he was. He told the officer firmly that he was not giving him his ID. His voice sounded as cold as ice, showing he was not moved by the threats. Harlan lunged forward suddenly and grabbed Curtis's wrist with a rough grip. He twisted Curtis's arm behind his back and shoved him hard against the wooden railing of the porch. The cold metal handcuffs bit deep into Curtis's skin, causing a lot of pain. Harlan made them extra tight on purpose just to be mean and show his power. He felt like a big winner in that moment, puffing out his chest. He really thought he was taking a nobody to jail to teach him a lesson about showing respect to a badge. He marched Curtis down the steps and shoved him into the back of the very hot and cramped police car. Harlan slammed the door shut with a loud bang and laughed with his partner. He told the rookie that they had caught a real tough guy today, and that he would enjoy seeing him cry at the station. Inside the back seat, Curtis sat in total silence. He was not crying or yelling or begging for mercy. He was very calm because he knew exactly what was about to happen at the police station. The trap was set, and Harlan had walked right into it without even knowing he was in trouble. The ride to the police station was very short and quiet. Harlan was still acting like he was a big hero who had saved the day. He dragged Curtis into the building through the back door, still treating him roughly. The air inside the station smelled like old floors and cheap floor wax, a smell Curtis knew very well from his years of work. Harlan pushed Curtis toward a hard metal bench that was bolted to the floor in the waiting area. He told him to sit down and stay very quiet, or things would get worse. Then Harlan walked up to the booking desk with a big smirk on his face. He was smiling and acting very proud of himself in front of the other officers. He told the sergeant at the desk that he had arrested a very suspicious man who was prowling and resisting arrest. He lied about almost everything that had actually happened on the porch that morning to make himself look better. The sergeant's name was Brooks. He was a much older man who had seen many different criminals come and go over the years and had learned to read people well. He looked at Curtis sitting very calmly on the bench. He noticed that Curtis did not look like a typical criminal at all. Curtis did not look scared or angry or worried. "If you want, I can continue formatting the rest of your script the same way until it's fully ready for narration or video production." He just looked at the wall with a very serious and focused face like he was waiting for a meeting. Harlan reached into his own pocket and pulled out Curtis's dark leather wallet. He tossed it onto the heavy wooden counter with a loud thud that echoed in the room. He told the sergeant to check the ID and see if this clown had any warrants or trouble with the law in the past. Sergeant Brooks picked up the wallet slowly, his eyes tired. He flipped it open to find a driver's license to start the paperwork. But suddenly his eyes went very wide and his mouth dropped open. He did not see a regular ID card. He saw a shining gold shield with a big eagle on the top that caught the light of the room. It said Federal Bureau of Investigation in big letters. He looked at the photo on the ID and read the name aloud to himself. It said Special Agent in Charge, Curtis Vaughn. The sergeant actually stopped breathing for a second because he was so shocked. His face turned as white as a ghost. His hands started to shake so much that the wallet rattled against the wooden desk. He realized that his officer had just put handcuffs on one of the most powerful law enforcement agents in the entire country. He looked at Harlan. Then he looked at the gold badge, and he knew their whole world was about to fall apart. Sergeant Brooks finally found his voice, but it was just a tiny, weak whisper. He told Harlan to get over to the desk immediately. Harlan was busy stirring sugar into his morning coffee, still acting like he had done a wonderful job and was better than everyone else. He laughed and asked if the man had a long criminal record. But when he saw the look of pure terror on the sergeant's face, his smile went away instantly. He walked over and looked down at the counter. The moment he saw that gold FBI shield, his knees almost gave out under him and he had to grab the edge of the desk. The arrogant red color in his face turned into a sickly pale gray. He realized he had just kidnapped a federal commander on his own property. Curtis did not wait for an apology from the men who had treated him so poorly. He stood up from the hard bench, and even in his old sweatpants he looked like a king standing in his palace because of his dignity. He told the sergeant to come around the desk and take the handcuffs off right now. He ordered Harlan to stay at least 10 feet away from him at all times, treating him like a danger. The sergeant scrambled to find the keys, tripping over his own feet. His hands were shaking so much it took him 3 tries to get the locks open. When the metal finally clicked open and fell away, Curtis did not rub his sore wrists or complain about the pain. He just looked at Harlan with eyes that were colder than a winter storm. He told the officer that he had just committed a federal crime by breaking the very law he was supposed to protect. Just then, the captain of the police station walked into the room to see what the noise was about. He saw the chaos and tried to figure out what was happening. When he found out that his officer had arrested an FBI special agent on his own porch, he knew his whole department was in deep trouble. He tried to ask Curtis to come into his private office to talk quietly and settle things like friends. But Curtis said no. He told the captain that this was not just a small mistake that could be fixed with a talk. It was a violation of his human rights. He demanded that all the camera footage from the police cars and the officers' uniforms be saved and protected immediately, so it could not be deleted. He was going to make sure that Harlan never wore a police badge again as long as he lived. Now, we have reached the end of the story, and it is time for the secret I promised you at the start. The legal phrase that Curtis used to officially end Harlan's career was Title 18, Section 242. This is a very serious federal law in our country that protects us all. It says that if a police officer uses their power to take away someone's constitutional rights on purpose, they can be sent to prison for a long time. By saying those specific words, Curtis was not just complaining about a mean cop who was having a bad day. He was starting a real federal criminal case against the man. This story teaches us a very important lesson about life and how we should treat each other. True power is not about being the loudest person in the room or carrying a gun to scare others. It is about having a good, honest character and following the rules that keep us all safe and happy. Officer Harlan thought he was big because he could bully people, but his own ego destroyed him in the end. Curtis was the one with the real power because he stayed calm and let the law do the hard work for him. What would you have done if you were the young rookie officer watching this happen? Would you have stayed silent to stay out of trouble? Or would you have told your partner he was wrong? It is something very important to think about when you look at the world. Thank you for listening to this helpful story about a group of caring experts who want to see fairness in the world for everyone. The aftermath of that morning was very swift and very hard for the Oakidge Township Police Department. Within just a few hours, federal investigators arrived at the station to take all the evidence and start their own work. They did not just look at what happened to Curtis on his porch that day. They looked at every single complaint ever filed against Officer Harlon by other people over the years. They found a very long history of him picking on people who did not have the power to fight back or the knowledge of the law. Because Curtis stood his ground and refused to be bullied, he exposed a bad officer who had been hurting the community for a long time. Harlon did not just lose his job that day. He was banned from ever working as a policeman ever again in any town. The neighborhood of Oakidge Estates went back to being a quiet and happy place, but things felt different and better. Vivian Hargrove, the neighbor who had called the police because she was being nosy and judgmental, was so embarrassed by what she had caused that she stopped coming outside to watch the street. She realized that her own unfair thoughts had almost ruined an innocent man's life. Curtis finally finished unpacking his moving boxes and made his house feel like a real home for his family. He and his young daughter, Riley, lived there very peacefully for a long time, knowing that the neighborhood was now much safer because one bad cop was off the streets for good. This case is a perfect example of why we must always stand up for what is right, even when it feels a little bit scary to do so. It reminds us that nobody, not even someone with a shiny badge and a uniform, is above the law. If we want a world that is fair for everyone, we have to hold people in power accountable for the things they do. Curtis Vaughn could have used his badge to save himself instantly, but he chose to be a hero for everyone else who might have been Harlan's next victim. Thank you for joining us for this deep look into fairness and the power of doing what is right in your heart. If this story moved your heart, please show your support and share it with someone who believes in being kind. Your support helps us tell more stories that really matter to families and communities. Before you go, we want to know what you think about this. Do you think the captain should have also been punished for letting Harlan stay on the force for so long despite the complaints? We truly love hearing your thoughts and feelings about these things. I am your friend and storyteller, and this has been a helpful lesson in doing the right thing. I will see you in the next story. The story of Curtis Vaughn did not just end with one man losing his job. It became a huge lesson for the entire town. After the news spread, the police department had to change the way they trained every single one of their new officers to make sure this never happened again. They started teaching something called de-escalation. That is a big word that just means learning how to talk to people calmly and kindly instead of starting a fight. The rookie officer, Bryce Langford, was given a second chance to be a good cop, but he had to attend special classes to learn how to stand up for what is right, even when his boss is telling him to do something wrong. Curtis Vaughn stayed in his new home at 440 Maplewood Drive for many years. He became a very respected member of the community, not just because he was an FBI agent, but because he was a man of peace and kindness. He showed everyone that you do not need to shout to have real power. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can ever do is stand still, stay calm, and let the truth speak for itself. His daughter, Riley, grew up and finished college, and she was so proud to know her father had made their new neighborhood truly safe for everyone to live in. As we finish this journey together, please remember that fairness is not just about punishment. It is about keeping things in balance. When someone like Officer Harlan tips the scale with mean feelings and a big ego, someone like Curtis Vaughn has to pull it back with courage and wisdom. The power inversion we saw today proves that a bully's strength is actually their greatest weakness. When they try to crush someone who knows their rights, they only end up crushing themselves. We hope this story inspired you to look a little deeper and judge people a little less by what they wear. If you enjoyed this helpful story about justice, please check out our other stories that are available right now. Each one is a new lesson in how people act and how the law works to protect us. Do not forget to stay connected so you are always the first to hear our next story. Thank you for being part of our caring community. I am your storyteller, and remember, Stay calm, stay informed, and always stand up for what is fair. Goodbye for now, and take care of each other.